What's going on, guys? Welcome to our daily show where we discuss the fourth stimulus check update, what's going on in Washington, D.C., in the United States, money, investing, and the next stimulus package, which is $3.5 trillion and is quickly moving to the finish line in the U.S. House of Representatives and could possibly be voted on here very, very quickly, as we also have a vote scheduled for Monday for the physical infrastructure package. And we'll have a lot of Democrats that will be upset if the stimulus package is not voted on before that. We also have a looming government shutdown that will happen on September 30th at midnight if they don't come to a conclusion on that, as well as a first ever government default where Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says that the government will literally run out of money for the first time ever and will default on government debt obligations, payments, and interest owed by the U.S. government if they don't raise or suspend the U.S. debt limit. And they just had a vote in the House of Representatives that passed. But the problem was is that all the Democrats voted yes, and all the Republicans voted no to raise the debt limit. So that vote now goes to the House, or I'm sorry, goes from the House to the Senate. And we're going to need 60 votes to pass that bill. That's a combined bill to fund the government for a government shutdown, to prevent a government shutdown, and to raise the debt limit ceiling. And we're going to need 60 votes to pass that. And all the Republicans voted no. We'll be hearing from Mitch McConnell in this video on why the Republicans are voting no on that and why the Republicans are going to vote no on the next stimulus package as well. Yeah, so we'll be hearing from Mitch McConnell on why they're voting no on that. We'll be hearing from the Democrats on how they're going to try to vote and pass the next stimulus package as. So if you find these videos helpful, don't forget to hit the like button down below. Make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't yet. It's completely free to do so. New videos come out here on our channel every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. First, we will hear from Chairman of the Democratic Caucus, Hakeem Jeffries. He is the person who is expected to replace Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House or leader of the Democrats in the House when Nancy Pelosi retires, whenever that happens here within the next few years. So Hakeem Jeffries is expected to be the next leader of the Democrats in the House whenever she does retire. So here's Hakeem Jeffries on the next stimulus package. Check this out.
Let's now turn to Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of New York. He is, of course, the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. Thanks so much for being with us, Hakeem. Eddie Glaude is here and has the first question. Eddie.
Congressman, always good to see you. I wanted to ask you the question, where do you think the lines are drawn? Everyone is talking about the Democrats will come together, but it seems to me that the moderates have their line that they don't want to cross and progressives have their line where they don't want to cross. How do you think in the end you guys will come together to produce an infrastructure bill and the reconciliation?
Well, good morning. It's great to see you. I think the reason why we're going to come together is because fundamentally we all agree on one thing, that the basic American contract, which is if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself and for your family and retire with grace and dignity. For far too many Americans, that contract has been broken for a wide variety of reasons, because of wage stagnation, because of retirement insecurity, because of the high cost of health care or child care or long-term care, or the high cost of a college education. And so there's broad agreement across the entire ideological spectrum of the House Democratic Caucus that these are the challenges that we need to confront with the fierce urgency of now in order to build back better. We're working on the specifics, and over the next few days, I believe we're on track. But because we agree on the fundamental challenge that we have to tackle for everyday Americans, I believe we're going to be able to get both pieces of legislation over the finish line.
Congressman Jeffries, good morning. It's Willie Geist. So what Congresswoman Jayapal told us and members of the Progressive Caucus have said publicly is that there will be no $1 trillion infrastructure package without the $3.5 trillion reconciliation package, the much larger package. Do you believe that to be a good strategy to attach one to the other and say we won't give you that without this? And do you think that $3.5 trillion number needs to be at $3.5 trillion? Or do you believe there's wiggle room, as some moderates have said, $2 trillion or $2.5 trillion is more palatable to them?
Well, we're on track to do both, and I think we have to fix our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, our airports, our mass transportation system, ensure that we can bring high-speed internet all across America, urban America, suburban America, rural America, Appalachia, and small-town America. So we have to take those steps that are outlined within the bipartisan infrastructure agreement. But at the same time, we also have to bring down healthcare costs and child care costs and make permanent the child tax credit that benefits working families, middle-class families, and has lifted half of American children out of poverty.
Right.
These are all things that have to be done if we are going to restore that American dream for the broadest possible swath of the American people. So I agree that we have to continue to proceed on this parallel track. That's not a secret. We outlined that from the very beginning. The Speaker has eloquently indicated from the start that is the way this is going to go down. And I believe that that $3.5 trillion number is the appropriate framework number, but nothing is agreed upon until everything is agreed upon. And the Senate can be a little bit of a quirky institution. And so let's see what comes out of the other side of the Capitol.
A little quirky?
So you're open to that number coming down a little bit, Congressman, from 3.5?
I think that it doesn't make sense for us at this particular point in time to haggle over the number. Let's get done what we have to get done for the middle class, those who aspire to be part of it, for young people, for seniors, for the poor, the sick, and the afflicted. I think 3.5 is the appropriate number as a target, but we are in a negotiation right now, and so I don't want to get out ahead of anyone else who's involved in that.
Yeah, so a couple things here is they are set for a vote on the physical infrastructure package on Monday. That's the $1.2 trillion physical infrastructure package that has already passed the Senate. So they've already passed the Senate. The deal is already written. The bill's already written. So it's a very easy vote. They don't have to do anything but literally vote on the bill in the House. Bill's written. It's all tied up in a bow, waiting in the House. And Nancy Pelosi had to make a deal with the moderate Democrats. There's progressive Democrats and there's moderate Democrats that on September 27th, they would vote for the physical infrastructure package. They thought they'd have the stimulus package done by then. And, well, that's meant to be seen. We'll see. They are going to be working through the weekend here. Check this out. House panels set to take up the Democrats' $3.5 trillion bill this weekend. House panel set to take up the Democrats' $3.5 trillion bill this weekend. So they will be working through this bill the entire weekend. That's right. Representative John Yarmuth, a Democrat from Kentucky, chairman of the House Budget Committee, said his panel will begin to mark up the Democrats' $3.5 trillion social spending plan this week. I think he's supposed to say this week. Yarmuth told reporters on Thursday afternoon that the panel will start piecing together the chunks of legislation approved by the 13 House committees earlier this month that will make up the massive package. Quote, "We put all of them together and that's the bill," Yarmuth explained, noting the markup process in this panel is not the same as it isn't any other committees and won't involve. The committee confirmed later on Thursday evening that the markup will take place virtually on Saturday afternoon. The Democrats are struggling to put together a deal on the massive plan and face a Monday deadline to vote on a separate physical infrastructure package. House progressives are threatening to vote against that piece of legislation unless the larger stimulus package receives a vote first. Yarmuth on Thursday said it's possible the bipartisan physical infrastructure deal could pass next week on Monday, but added he's spoken to, quote, a lot of progressives who are not ready to vote for the bill on Monday. And it's really a 50-50 chance whether that physical infrastructure bill is going to pass on Monday or not. Tensions have simmered between different factions of the party in recent weeks as spending negotiations reached a boiling point over the forthcoming reconciliation package, the stimulus package. A number of moderates have expressed concerns about the size of the package, particularly its price tags, as well as certain proposals for corporate tax hikes and prescription drug reform and Medicare expansion for seniors. Many progressives separately have doubled down on the need for much of these proposals, touting their popularity, and some have argued the package should even be larger than $3.5 trillion. We've compromised big time. We cut that proposal almost in half and agreed to $3.5 trillion. That, to my mind, is a major compromise, says Senate Budget Committee Chairman Senator Bernie Sanders said on the floor earlier on. Now, for a counterpoint, here is Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell leader of the Republicans on why they're not voting for this next stimulus package, why they're going to vote no for this next stimulus package, and why all the Republicans are also going to vote no to raising the debt limit. Basically, they're going to vote to let the government default and are going to force the Democrats to raise the debt limit on their own. But a lot of the Democrats are starting to say they don't even know if they can raise the debt limit on their own in time, and that the government could default because they might not be able to get the process done in time. So here's Mitch McConnell on why they're not going to vote for the next stimulus package and why they're also not going to vote to raise the debt limit. Check this out.
Republicans are shining a spotlight on the reckless taxing and spending spree that Washington Democrats are riding behind closed doors. The radical left is pushing in all their chips. They want to use this terrible but temporary pandemic as a Trojan horse for permanent socialism. And President Biden, who ran as a unifying moderate, is either powerless to stop them or does not wish to. An avalanche of crushing tax hikes that would hurt families and help China. Government power grab over more of America's healthcare decisions, childcare choices, family finances, and daily lives. Trillions upon trillions more in government spending when families are already facing inflation. None of this, of course, will get a single Republican vote in either chamber. Democrats have not even consulted us. They haven't tried to earn our votes. From the start, they plan to use a party line fast-track process to ram through the Senate this version of their vision of America. That's why Republicans will not help this unified Democratic government with its basic duty to raise the debt ceiling. This could not be simpler. If they want to tax, borrow, and spend historic sums of money without our input, they'll have to raise the debt limit without our help. This is the reality. I've been saying this very clearly since July, and I think our Democratic colleagues are finally getting it because now they're fumbling for bogus excuses. They remain confident they can spend trillions of dollars to remake the entire economy in a couple of weeks, but supposedly they just cannot clear this much smaller procedural hurdle without Republican help. Really? Give me a break. Earlier this year, Senate Democrats specifically requested and received extra flexibility around the reconciliation process. They have every procedural tool they need to promptly advance a separate standalone piece of legislation addressing the debt limit without a single Republican vote. Our colleagues have plenty of time to get this done.
Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. As always, I like to show both sides of the story. Mitch McConnell thinks it's laughable. As always, both parties are playing this high stakes games of chicken. But remember, the Democrats have this standalone bill that has a government shutdown bill. It has the debt limit ceiling bill. It has some other things. It does have some foreign aid in there because, again, I'll tell you the truth. Mitch McConnell has a standalone bill as well that's basically the same thing. It has a government shutdown bill. It has foreign aid in there. It actually has more foreign aid in there because it has the Iron Dome in there, which the Democrats had to remove because some Democrats didn't want it in there. But Mitch McConnell's bill has even more foreign aid in the standalone bill. So both the Democrats' bill and the Republicans' bill, these standalone bills have foreign aid in there, just to be clear here. I have no idea why they put foreign aid in an emergency bill, but nonetheless, both parties are putting foreign aid in an emergency bill to keep the government open. The problem is that the Republican standalone bill doesn't have raising the debt limit ceiling. And the Democrats' bill does. And the debt limit ceiling is the number one priority here because the government shutdown bill, the government's going to shut down at the end of the month, but the debt limit ceiling the government has never defaulted. Okay. The debt limit is the much more important, much more hurtful thing that can happen. If the government defaults, that has never been done in the history of our country. We've had government shutdowns before, they're bad. But a government default is basically the government running out of money, saying to the world, saying to the entire world, the U.S. government, the U.S. country has run out of money and cannot pay its bills. Our credit rating would crash, our economy could crash, our stock market could crash, our entire financial system could possibly crash. This is way, way, way worse. And even Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, Steve Mnuchin, several Treasury Secretaries, former Treasury Secretaries say it has never happened before, and it's much, much worse than a government shutdown. Government shutdown's bad. A government default, it's kind of the equivalent to the government going bankrupt. Much, much worse. We do not want to see a default. And that is going to happen at some point in October. We don't even know the date because Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says we can't predict the date. So for a counterpoint to Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, here's Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren. Here's kind of her rebuttal to Mitch McConnell.
I do believe it's time to call the Republicans out over this. Are you kidding me on the debt ceiling? When Donald Trump was president and needed to raise the debt ceiling over and over, Democrats said, yep, we get it. And what are we trying to raise the debt ceiling for now? To cover that were incurred during the Trump administration. And the Republicans want to turn around and play political games with that. They want to threaten to blow up our entire economy and actually the world economy over that. They want to throw our good name for their political gains. No, where I am right now is to call out the Republicans who are saying that they are going to behave so irresponsibly as not to vote to increase the debt limit. Keep in mind, this is not about future spending. This is about honoring the promises we made back during the Trump administration.
I mean, she's fired up. It is true, you need to raise the debt ceiling just to pay the interest alone for all the past administration. Remember that the U.S. government spends more than they make for many, 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 many years going here. It's very, very rare that the U.S. government has a balanced budget. It's been for many, many years now. And former President Donald Trump, as you can see here, actually added more to the national debt or national deficit than any president ever in 4 years. He added over $8 trillion. And the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which they did through the reconciliation process when the Republicans had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, that added over $2 trillion in deficit alone. And the last two stimulus package, or the first two stimulus packages, added let me see here, 2.3 trillion from the first and almost $1 trillion from the second. So that was about $3.3 trillion there as well. So the Republicans added $8 trillion in deficit just in 4 years underneath Trump. And they're the ones that don't want to pay the debt. So it's kind of ironic. It's kind of ironic. And I mean, you can look this up here. So no other president in past history added $8 trillion or more in 4 years. So, I mean, these are stats. This is actual numbers. You can look this up. But nonetheless, it really doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're independent. The government has to raise the debt ceiling, or else we default and go bankrupt and financial collapse. And anything having to do with the government paying out money would be at jeopardy. Social Security possibly, the military possibly, child tax credits possibly, school systems possibly, anything that's funded by the government would possibly be at risk. And we see possibly, if you've been watching the show here the last several days, you've seen Bernie Sanders say that, you've seen Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer say that. We really don't know because this has never happened before. The government has never defaulted. So there would still be some money coming in, but remember that we run a deficit, and we have for many, many years, whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president. We really don't know what would happen. We don't want to find that out either because it would be very, very bad, catastrophic. But nonetheless, the Democrats are working towards a stimulus package. As you can see here in this headline, they're set to take up and marking up the bill, finishing up the bill here this weekend, which means they're kind of putting the bill together into one bill this weekend. That's why I like to show you guys these headlines, show you these interviews, so you know what the Democrats are saying, so you know what the Republicans are saying. Now, remember the stimulus package, the $3.5 trillion stimulus package, that passes without any Republican votes. So the Democrats pass that on their own, as long as the Democrats can all get together and vote on that together. The debt limit ceiling can be passed with or without Republican votes. It would be easier to pass it with Republican votes. They can pass the debt limit ceiling and the government shutdown bill without Republican votes through the reconciliation process. But we have some Democrats saying that they might not be able to do that in time by the end of this month, which is now 6 days away. Yeah, so nonetheless, I will keep you up to date with what's going on with the stimulus package. Now, remember that the stimulus package is going to be fully paid for. So, and in fact, we have some Democratic senators that are demanding it be fully paid for. They're not going to vote for it. Okay, so it's very different than the last three stimulus packages. The first two by former President Donald Trump, and the third stimulus check package by President Biden. Those three went to the national debt. Nobody really paid for them because the government already runs a deficit. So when they added those on top, they all just went to the national deficit. These next two packages, the physical infrastructure package and the next stimulus package, the 1.2 trillion and the 3.5 trillion, are both going to be fully paid for or almost fully paid for, whether it's 90% or 95%. When it all comes down to it, we have some senators demanding that they be fully paid for. So we'll have to see when it all comes down to it. But they are expected to be fully paid for. Okay. So it's not like this, they're taking a $3.5 trillion package and it's not going to be paid for. They're raising taxes on corporation. They're raising taxes on people making over $400,000. They're using leftover stimulus money that's already been accounted for. They're forcing pharmaceutical companies to lower prescription drug prices through new laws, and that's going to save the U.S. government like $600 to $700 billion. And they're using that savings to pay for part of the stimulus package and all sorts of things like that to pay for the package. So the package is fully paid for. They're paying for it and then using that money for the stimulus package. So it's very, very different than the last three stimulus packages, two by former President Trump and one by Biden. So everybody's clear on that here. So remember, I tell you both sides of the story here. What the Republicans are saying, what the Democrats are saying. This next stimulus package is paid for. It's very, very different. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next video.